It was supposed to be one of those perfect summer camping trips, something we could laugh about later, post a few cool photos on Instagram, maybe even make it a tradition. It was me, my cousin Ryan, and our mutual friend Jared. We'd talked about doing something off the grid for months, and when Ryan stumbled across what he called a completely uncharted camping area, we were all in. No official trail, no campsites, just a patch of dense forest he found on some backpacking forum. "It's the real deal," he said. "Zero tourists, zero noise." He wasn't lying. The drive up was long. Hours passed before we turned off the main highway and hit this dirt road that got more narrow and overgrown the deeper we drove in. The forest around us looked wild-like. No one had walked through it in years. We lost cell signal about 30 minutes before reaching the trailhead Ryan had marked on his GPS. That didn't bother us much at the time. We were looking to disconnect. When we finally parked the car, the sun was already dipping behind the treetops. I remember feeling this weird silence settle over the place, like the kind that presses into your ears, where even the wind feels muted. Jared joked that it felt like we were being watched, but Ryan brushed him off. I kind of laughed too, but something about the way the woods just stood there, completely still, gave me this strange gut feeling I couldn't shake. We hiked in about 2 miles before we found a decent clearing surrounded by trees on all sides. No paths, no trash, no signs of other campers. It was exactly what Ryan had promised. We set up the tents, built a small fire pit, and unpacked our stuff. It started to feel like a good idea again. That first night wasn't scary. It was actually kind of peaceful. The fire crackled. We roasted hot dogs, told dumb stories, even cracked open a few beers. There was laughter and that sense of freedom that only comes from being far away from everything. But around midnight, while we were just sitting there looking up at the stars, we all heard it at the same time. A faint snap, like a twig being stepped on. It came from the woods behind Jared's tent. We all froze, heads turned. For a few seconds, we just listened. Nothing. Total silence. Then another sound closer this time. A soft rustle, like leaves being disturbed. Ryan stood up with his flashlight and shined it toward the trees, but the beam barely pierced through the darkness. "Probably a deer," he muttered, but he didn't sound convinced. We called out, "Hello," just in case someone had wandered near. No answer. The sound stopped. We tried to shake it off. Animals move around at night. We told ourselves, no big deal, but I noticed that none of us really relaxed after that. We all went into our tents about 30 minutes later, pretending it didn't bother us. But it did. I had trouble sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd hear the wine door, at least what I thought was the wind brushing against the tent fabric. Then, sometime around 2 or 3 a.m., I heard breathing. I wasn't dreaming. I know that for sure. It was soft, low, controlled, like someone was standing just outside my tent, trying not to be noticed. I didn't move. I barely even breathed myself. I kept telling myself it was just Ryan or Jared messing around. Maybe they had to pee or something, but the breathing stayed for at least a full minute. Then I heard footsteps slow, careful ones moving away toward the trees. I wanted to unzip the tent and look out. I really did, but something deep inside told me not to. Next morning, over breakfast, I mentioned it casually. Jared went pale. He said he heard the same exact thing breathing right outside his tent. Ryan didn't hear anything, but even he looked rattled. We all sort of laughed it off again, but I could tell none of us were really comfortable anymore. We thought about packing up. We tried to bring the mood back with some music from a Bluetooth speaker, but it kept disconnecting. Eventually, the battery died altogether. That was when we heard it again. Footsteps, crunching leaves. This time, not just a snap or two this time. It was a full-on walking pace, slow, deliberate. We grabbed flashlights, but no matter where we pointed them, we didn't see anything. Jared shouted into the trees, "Who's out there? We're armed." That wasn't true, but we hoped it would scare whoever or whatever was doing this. Silence, then a whisper. I swear to God I heard it. A voice from the dark. I couldn't make out what it said, but it was right there, maybe 30 feet into the woods. None of us said a word after that. We backed toward the fire, turned all our lights on, and didn't sleep that night. Not even a minute. And that was only the second night. By morning, none of us looked like we'd slept. Our faces were pale, eyes sunken, and hands jittery as we packed up our breakfast gear in silence. The fire had gone cold long before dawn, and no one volunteered to relight it. Even the birds, which had filled the first morning with chirping and life, were eerily quiet. Not a single call, not a single flutter, just ... nothing. We didn't talk much about what happened that night. I think we were all afraid that speaking it out loud would somehow give it more power. Like acknowledging the whisper we heard would invite it back. Jared kept rubbing his arms, even though it wasn't cold. And Ryan, usually the loud one, barely said a word. He looked like he was trying to come up with a logical explanation for everything, but couldn't. Still, we made the decision to stay. I don't know why. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was denial. Maybe we thought if we just made it through one more night, we'd prove to ourselves that it was all in our heads. So, we decided to go on a short hike to clear our minds. We figured the sun and movement would help shake the paranoia. Ryan led us north through a barely visible deer trail, deeper into the woods. He had a pocket compass, said he'd keep track of the direction so we wouldn't get lost. But about 30 minutes in, Jared stopped. Dude, this is where we came from yesterday. We looked around. The trees did look familiar, too familiar. Same crooked birch tree, same fallen log with moss on one side, same oddly shaped stump that looked like a twisted face. Ryan insisted we had gone in a straight line, but the forest didn't agree. We'd somehow ended up back at the same spot. We tried again, this time heading west. Same result. No matter which way we walked, it felt like the forest was folding back in on itself, like it didn't want us to leave. Or worse, like something was walking in circles with us, unseen, just beyond the trees. Eventually, we gave up and returned to camp. It was mid-afternoon by then, but the sun looked dim, as if a film of grey had settled over the sky. Not quite clouds dash, just ... dullness, like light was being drained. That's when we noticed the rocks. Around our campsite, scattered near the tents, were small stacks of rocks, 5 or 6 piles, each one about the size of a hand, balanced perfectly, like someone had taken time and care placing them. We hadn't seen them when we left. Ryan immediately accused us of messing around, but none of us had done it. No way those were here this morning, Jared said, voice cracking. We knocked them down, every single one. Looking back, I wish we hadn't. That night, we didn't build a fire. We stayed in our tents, zipped tight, flashlights in our sleeping bags. Jared had a knife. Ryan held a rock the size of a softball. I clutched my flashlight so hard my knuckles ached. The forest outside wasn't just quiet, this time it was wrong. I don't know how to explain it. There were no bugs, no frogs, no wind. It felt like we were at the bottom of some huge vacuum, like sound itself had been sucked away. Then, sometime after midnight, I heard footsteps again, but this time they were running, not walking. Running, they came from the trees, fast, heavy, circling our tents, thump, thump, thump through the leaves, over the dirt, fast enough to shake the ground. I could hear Jared muttering, "What the hell? What the hell?" over and over from his tent. Then it stopped, dead silence. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would burst. And then, something pressed against my tent. Not claws, not hands, a face. I didn't see it directly, I was too frozen to move, but I heard the fabric stretch. Something was leaning into the tent wall, right by my head, pressing into it with its full weight. I could hear its breathing, wet, shallow, animalistic breathing, right through the thin fabric. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. And then, just as fast, it pulled away. I don't know how long I stayed awake. Hours, probably. The breathing came and went 3 more times. Once near Jared's tent, once near Ryan's, once circling all 3 of us. There was no talking, no sound, just that slow, menacing pace and those impossible footfalls. When daylight finally came, I burst out of my tent. Jared was already out, wide-eyed, trembling. Ryan was too. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. None of us even spoke, until Jared said something that made my skin crawl. "There were voices," he whispered. "Last night, after the running stopped." "What voices?" I asked. "I don't know. They weren't human. They were trying to sound human, but they weren't." I felt sick. We all agreed to leave that morning. No more pushing through, no more toughing it out. But when we reached the path we came from, it wasn't there. The clearing was still there. Hakka was not. It was gone. Vanished. No tire tracks. No broken branches from when we drove in. Just untouched grass and wildflowers where the dirt path had once been. That's when we realized we weren't just lost. We were trapped. We didn't speak for a long time. Just stood there, staring at the empty clearing where the car should have been. There was no sign it had ever existed. No tire tracks. No indentations in the grass. Even the dirt road we came in on was gone, like it had never been there. I remember feeling a sensation that didn't quite register as fear at first, more like my mind refusing to process it. Eventually, Ryan broke the silence. We're in the wrong spot, that's all. But even he didn't believe it. His voice was too shaky. We retraced our steps, or at least we tried to. But every time we thought we recognized a landmark, an oddly twisted tree, a patch of wild mushrooms, a rock that looked like it had moss, shaped like a hand, it would vanish, or worse, lead us in a circle. Jared marked a tree with a knife, carving a deep X into the bark. 40 minutes later, we passed the same tree again. Same mark, same everything. It was like we were rats in a maze, but instead of walls, we had woods, and instead of cheese, we had a growing sense of dread. Eventually, hunger drove us back to the camp. The food we had brought was mostly still there, but it was cold, and we had no appetite. Everything tasted of not spoiled, just wrong. The sun was setting again, and with it, a familiar tension began to return. That sick, low pressure in the air, like a storm that wasn't coming. That silence that made your ears ring. That feeling that you were being watched, but when you turned, there was only trees. We didn't argue this time. We set up a fire as big as we could manage, and all sat around it, close together. No one wanted to go near the tents. We made a pact, no matter what we heard, no matter what happened, we wouldn't leave the fire. We all agreed, but the forest didn't care. It started just after midnight. The fire had burned low, crackling, casting long shadows into the trees. That's when we heard it. Laughter, distant at first, faint, like someone far off was telling a joke, but it grew louder, closer. It didn't sound right. It didn't even sound human. It was ... trying to sound human, like someone had watched a YouTube video of laughter and was imitating it badly. It would rise in pitch and then drop suddenly, like a voice being warped by an old cassette player. Then another one joined in, and another. 3, maybe 4 different voices, all around us, just beyond the trees. We couldn't see anything, but we could feel them. Jared gripped his knife. Ryan was whispering a prayer under his breath. I just froze, and then the laughter stopped. In its place came a voice that made my stomach turn. It said my name, Sorf, Rosby, from the trees. That was my name. No one in our group ever called me by my full name, not even my parents anymore. But this voice, it said it like it knew me. Eli, come here. I didn't move. None of us did. Then another voice said Ryan's name, then Jared's. Each one different, each one wrong. And then something stepped into the firelight. It stood maybe 20 feet away, just far enough that we couldn't make out the details. It was tall, thin, too thin. Its limbs hung at odd angles, like it was held together by wires or string. Its head tilted unnaturally, like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Its eyes caught the firelight and they weren't eyes. They were hollow, just pits of black that seemed to pull the light in. Jared stood up and shouted, "Leave us alone." The thing tilted its head again, slowly, like a dog trying to understand. Then it spoke, not in its own voice, but in Jared's. Perfect, identical, like a recording. "Leave us alone." Then it stepped back into the darkness, gone. None of us slept. We kept the fire burning until morning, but something had changed. The forest was still wrong, but now it felt like we were being studied, watched, tested, like it was playing with us. When the sun finally rose though, it barely pierced the tree. Kanapi, we packed what we could. Ryan insisted we walk until we found a road, a ranger station, anything. But before we left, we saw something hanging from the tree above our camp. It was a rock, or what was left of one. It had been gutted, hollowed out, but not by claws or teeth, by something precise. Its limbs had been tied in a strange pattern with vines and twigs, like some kind of symbol. We didn't speak, we just left. We walked all day. Our phones were dead by then. compass stopped working. Even the sun seemed to move in circles. Every step deeper into those woods felt heavier, more like we weren't walking at all, like the forest was moving around us. That's when we found the cabin. It wasn't marked on any maps. It wasn't listed on the trail guides. It was just there, a single, decaying wooden structure, half collapsed, like it hadn't been touched in decades. But smoke was rising from the chimney, and inside, someone was waiting. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, the glow from the campfire gave me a false sense of comfort. Everyone else around me had gone to sleep. The night air was crisp, but I was sweating not from the heat, but from the lingering tension of the previous night. Those footsteps, that breathing, it wasn't something I could just shake off. I kept telling myself it was probably an animal, but deep down, I didn't believe that. That night, I decided to get some rest early. I figured if I could sleep through the night, I'd feel better in the morning. I turned off my flashlight, crawled into my sleeping bag, and closed my eyes. For the first few minutes, everything was fine, but then it started again. That sound, crunch, crunch, footsteps in the dry grass, slow and deliberate, just outside the tent. This time, I didn't reach for the flashlight. I didn't move. I just laid there completely still, trying to listen. The footsteps circled the tent, slowly, like someone was studying it, studying me. And then came the breathing, not mine, not close by, but right behind the tent, deep, slow, wet breaths, like someone standing just inches from the fabric. I gripped the edge of my sleeping bag tighter and held my breath, my heart pounding so hard I thought whoever was out there could hear it. Then came the scratching, light, deliberate, like fingernails gently scraping down the corner of the tent. Not enough to rip it, just enough to make sure I knew they were there. And then, silence. Complete, paralyzing silence. I waited a minute, 2, maybe 5. No more footsteps, no more breathing, just the sound of wind in the trees and the occasional distant owl. I slowly reached for the zipper and opened the tent just a few inches, peeking outside. Nothing, just darkness. I lay back down, but sleep never came. When morning finally arrived, I got up and checked around the tent. The grass was disturbed. You could clearly see where something or someone had walked around it. I asked the others if they had heard anything. Most of them shook their heads. But one guy said, "I thought I saw something move by the trees last night, but figured it was just a deer." That didn't help. By evening, I'd made up my mind. This would be my last night in the forest. As dusk set in, we built another fire, but this time I couldn't enjoy it. My eyes were constantly scanning the woods, looking for movement, listening for anything that felt off. Then I saw it. Out by the tree line, something shifted. Just for a second, I grabbed my flashlight and shone it toward the area. Nothing. But the moment I turned it off, the movement came again. It wasn't an animal. It was too tall, too deliberate. I called out. Everyone turned. I told them, "There's someone out there." We all stood and looked, but now there was nothing. Some of the group laughed it off. Others looked nervous. I couldn't stop shaking. That night, I didn't even bother trying to sleep. I sat upright in the tent, knife in one hand, flashlight in the other, eyes fixed on the flap. I must have dozed off at some point, because I remember snapping awake to a strange sound. It wasn't footsteps this time. It was whispering, low, muffled, like a voice buried beneath the wind. I held my breath, heart thudding again. Was it just my imagination? The trees? The wind playing tricks? I slowly unzipped the tent, just enough to peek out. Nothing. Just as I was about to sit back down, I saw it movement again, behind a tree about 30 feet away. This time, I didn't shine the light. I just stared, and then it stepped out. A tall, thin figure, half covered in the shadows. I couldn't make out any features, but it was definitely watching us. I backed into the tent and quietly zipped it shut. I didn't say a word to the others that night. I just sat, waiting, listening. Morning couldn't come fast enough. As soon as the sun was up, I packed my gear. While grabbing my backpack from the side of the tent, I noticed something in the dirt behind it. A footprint. One single, deep print. Not a boot, not a shoe, just bare toes. Someone had been standing there, barefoot, watching me. That was enough. I said my goodbyes and left the campsite before anyone else was even awake. I didn't tell them what I saw. I didn't want to be the crazy one, but I knew whatever was out there wasn't an animal. It wasn't lost, it wasn't harmless. It was watching. It knew I saw it, and worst of all, it wanted me to come back. I tried to forget about that trip, I really did. After I left the campsite, I drove straight home, windows rolled up, glancing in the rearview mirror every couple minutes, like something might have followed me. My friends stayed out there for another 2 nights. I never got a call from them, never a text, not even a check-in. That was normal, though we weren't that close. Still, I couldn't help but feel like I had abandoned them. The first few nights back home were restless. I'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, certain I'd heard footsteps in the hallway outside my room. Sometimes I'd think I saw something move in the corners of my eyes, just a shadow shifting unnaturally across the wall, but there was never anything there when I turned to look. I kept telling myself I was just shaken, a residual fear, that it'd go away in a few days, but it didn't. 3 days later, I got a text from one of the guys, Matt. He was one of the quieter ones on the trip. Barely said a word the whole time. His message said, "Did you see it too?" That's all. No hey or what's up. Just those 5 words. I replied instantly. "What do you mean?" No response. I called him, straight to voicemail. An hour later, another message came in. This one from an unknown number. Just a photo. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. It was blurry, like it had been taken while running. A dark forest, a face barely visible in the trees, elongated, pale eyes way too large and black. No expression, just watching. Then another text came through. Same number. "You should have stayed." My stomach dropped. I blocked the number immediately. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept every light in the house on. I double-checked the locks, sat in bed with a kitchen knife on my lap. Like that would help if something really came for me. Around 2:30 a.m., I heard tapping on my window. I live on the 2nd floor. I froze. It came again. Tap, tap, tap. I slowly turned my head toward the sound, expecting to see a branch or maybe a bird. But what I saw made my blood run cold. A face pressed against the glass, long and pale, just like the one in the photo. Those same massive black eyes, emotionless, void. Its mouth stretched into a grin, not a smile, a grin, like it was mocking me. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I just sat there, paralyzed, staring back. Then it lifted one long finger and slowly dragged it down the glass. I scrambled out of bed, grabbed my phone, and called the police. By the time they got there, whoever or whatever it was had vanished. No footprints, no marks, nothing. Just my word and the condensation streak on the window pane. The officer suggested I might have had a nightmare, maybe sleep paralysis. I didn't argue, I just nodded. Let him say what he needed to say, but I knew the truth. It had followed me back. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called the park ranger station near where we decamped and asked if there had been any other strange reports. The woman on the line was quiet for a moment. Then she asked me, "Were you at Black Hollow Creek?" My heart stopped. That was the exact name of the trail we hiked. "Yeah," I said. She paused again, then lowered her voice. "You're not the first one to call about something. Off in those woods, a group of hikers last summer left in the middle of the night claimed they were stalked by something human, but not quite. Another camper said they saw figures moving through the trees, always just out of reach, never making a sound. No one stays long up there anymore." I asked her why the place wasn't closed off. "Because there's no evidence," she replied. "No attacks, no bodies, just stories." That word hit me hot. That's what everyone would think this was. Just another scary tale. But it wasn't. It was real. A week later, I got a call from a mutual friend. Matt, the guy who texted me, was missing. He never came home after the trip. His car was found parked near a trailhead. Keys still in the ignition, doors locked from the inside. No sign of a struggle. No footprints leading anywhere. They searched the forest for 3 days. Nothing. The rest of the guys, they never talked about what happened. When I reached out to one of them, he hung up the moment I mentioned the trip. I think they're scared, just like I am. I don't go camping anymore. I don't even walk near the woods. But sometimes, when I'm lying in bed, I still hear it. That slow, heavy breathing. And sometimes, I wake up to find a new mark on my window. Just one long streak, like a finger dragging down the glass. It always happens after I try to talk about it, like now. So if you're watching this, do yourself a favor. Don't go camping alone. And if you do, don't ignore the sounds outside your tent, because sometimes things find you, and when they do, they don't let go.